Good evening, everybody. So, today's session we would be looking at a few literary terms along with their meanings. Just let me know in the chat box if my voice is audible. If my voice is audible, then we could start. Yeah, is my voice audible? Yeah, thank you, Roshni. Okay, we'll start with literary terms today, and in tomorrow's session, we would look at few literary forms with previous year questions. So that is how we'll be going about with the entire set of lectures. First, we'll do some theory or some lessons, and then we do previous year questions or MCQ questions. Okay. Yeah. So the first term is acculturation or enculturation. Now, this is a term that is associated with culture studies. Now, the very term itself denotes that it has something to do with culture because you have the word acculturation, culture here. So, this is a term that is used predominantly in the field of culture studies. Now, by acculturation, we mean that you are trying to learn the culture or the knowledge of the opposite culture or another culture. For example, if you're learning a new language, say for example, or in case you are learning to cook continental food or something else, you're trying new recipes from another land, then that also forms part of acculturation. Yeah, and acculturation, basically we use it also in ELT, wherein Schumann actually introduced the term acculturation, wherein language itself is used as a component or a medium through which we try to assume the culture of the target language. Yeah, so it could be also called as enculturation or acculturation. So it's a social process by which we learn the knowledge, practices, skills, and that enable us to become members of a culture. So this is acculturation, and this can also have its implications in post-colonial studies as well. The next term that we're looking at is agency. Now, agency is a term that is used most often in Marxism. By agency, what do we mean? Agency is something, for example, if there are human beings who can alter the course of history. For example, when there was French Revolution, people could gather together, they could rise in rebellion, and then overthrow monarchy, and democracy was in place in France. So that is the role of an agency, wherein individuals or human beings can collectively or as individuals, they can either individually or collectively alter the course of history. That is what is called as an agency. Now, what Marxism believes is, or why this term is very important with regard to Marxist criticism, is because Marxism believes that people cannot alter the course of history, meaning the bourgeoisie will always decide what becomes history, and the proletarians will have no say over history. So that is the reason why this sort of criticism or Marxist criticism does not believe in the presence of agency. Now, the next term is alienation. Now, alienation is a term that we use in Marxism and also in diaspora. So, in diasporic literature also we use this term alienation. Now, alien itself means that that is not something that is associated with the usual or the normal, but something that is outside. Yeah. So, basically, if you look at this term alienation, now say for example, you are a laborer, or say for example, I am a laborer, I manufacture this pen, say for example. Now, if I manufacture the pen, as soon as I manufacture the pen goes out into the market for sale. So I am different, or I am placed apart from the product that I manufacture. So in that case, this product does not belong to me. or I have no connection to this product after I have manufactured it. Alright, so the laborer is alienated from the product of labor. Now this is a product of my labor. I actually worked hard in order to manufacture this pen. But once that is created, once it is manufactured, as a laborer, I have nothing to do with this product of labor. Yeah, that is what is called as alienation. Now, this term alienation is used in case of laborers who are alienated from the products that they manufacture in a capitalist society. And this also is used again in diasporic literature, wherein people settle down in another country. Say, for example, Indians, they settle down in the US. They don't feel a sense of belongingness in India also they don't have this sense of belongingness. The same is the case with the US. They don't feel a sense of belongingness in either of these places. So that again is alienation. Yeah. The next term is ambivalence. Now ambivalence, like we know, it's a term that was introduced by Homi K. Bhabha, and it is associated with post-colonialism. So what do we mean by ambivalence? Now ambivalence is, for example, you like eating ice creams. Yeah, imagine the situation wherein you like eating ice creams, but as children, we were told not to eat, say, popsicles, or in Tamil we say kuchi ice. Yeah, as children, we were not allowed to eat them because generally our parents tell now if you eat from the roadside, you will catch infection or it will not be healthy. It is not prepared in a hygienic manner, so you're not supposed to eat it. So what happens is, at the same instance, you have two emotions. One is a very strong liking towards the popsicle ice cream. You want to eat it. And another is you also have this repulsion. You are worried or you also don't want it because it might be harmful to your health. Yeah. So there are these two contrasting emotions in one particular entity. So that is what is called as ambivalence. Now Homi K. Bhabha says, the same is the case with the colonizer. Now, when the Britishers colonized us, we had this ambivalence in us, wherein we liked them and we also hated them. We liked them, we assumed their culture, we mimicked their attire, we mimicked their food, their language, everything we mimicked, and we actually borrowed everything from them. But also we had this repulsion, we also had hatred towards them. So that relationship wherein you have both hatred and attraction, both towards one entity, that is what is called as ambivalence. So ambivalence is a complex role of attraction and repulsion that characterizes the behavior or the characterizes the relationship between the colonizer and the colonized. So at a time you have both liking towards one thing and also you hate a particular thing. That sort of a relationship is what is called as ambivalence, and this is a term that is associated with post-colonialism. The next thing is aura. Now aura is again a term that is associated with both Marxism and also culture studies. Aura is a term that was introduced by Walter Benjamin. Now Walter Benjamin, he actually talks about representation in one of his works. So in that particular work wherein he talks about representation, he uses this term aura. Now what does aura mean? Aura denotes actually the unique existence of a work. Now according to Walter Benjamin, each work that is created has its own aura. And this aura is present for any particular work of art. Take for example Mona Lisa. Mona Lisa is a work of art in a particular time and in space, and it has its own unique existence. Yeah, so it's said to have its own aura. Now what happens when you reproduce Mona Lisa? Now there are multiple paintings of Mona Lisa, but in fact if you were to visit and see the original painting which is in France, you will actually not be able to look at it. Like you actually take the darshan of Tirupati. In Tirupati, you will just be allowed to look at it for 2 to 3 seconds. That's all. That's all that you get to look at Mona Lisa, the original painting. But then there are multiple reproductions over the years at various museums, at various art galleries. You would be able to find the painting of Mona Lisa. Now, what happens or what is the problem with reproduction is when you reproduce a particular work of art, the aura is eroded, or the work loses its aura when that work gets replicated or reproduced. Now that is the idea of aura. Now he gives the example of the Last Supper by Da Vinci. The Last Supper, again you will find multiple paintings. Now because it has got multiple paintings, the aura that is associated with the work has got eroded. Now that is aura, a term that was introduced by Walter Benjamin. Yeah. The next is defamiliarization. Now this is a term that is associated with formalism and Russian formalism. Now, Russian formalism, if we have to talk about Russian formalism itself, now formalism is basically a term that is, or a school of thought that focused on form, basically, yeah. Form was more important than the content of the work, so that is formalism. And Russian formalism simply because these school of critics, they belonged or they lived in the totalitarian regime in Russia. So that's why it is called as Russian formalism. Now, Russian formalism focused on form, like I said, or the syntactic and stylistic devices that we use in any particular work of art. Now, to answer this question, what makes something a work of art was the main idea of formalists. So, we have this formalist critic, Victor Slavsky, who also tried to answer this question. What makes something art? And therefore, he came up with this idea of defamiliarization, or in Russian language, it is called as ostraniny, which is making a familiar object seem unfamiliar, alright, through the use of unfamiliar language. Now, this is a conscious effort, he says. Now, according to him, art is nothing but defamiliarization. Or, in other words, if you were to look at it, a lot of things that happen in our life, they are just habitualizations. Yeah. Now, for example, most often we take a stroll, we take a walk down a lane, we look at flowers and so on and so forth. We experience multiple things. We look at a rainbow, say for example. That could be a habit. I mean, when it rains, you actually, of course, see a rainbow. Now, what poets do is, this is a familiar thing. But then the poets, they use language in such a manner that this seems unfamiliar to you. Yeah, they use, say for example, convoluted sentences or roundabout manner in which they talk about a particular thing. And Victor Slavsky also, he talks about the writer who is able to do this with utmost capability. And he says one person who can do this really well is Leo Tolstoy. And he also gives the example of Anna Karenina. And he says the simple act of whipping. Yeah. The simple act of whipping is actually defamiliarized. And he uses convoluted language in order to talk about whipping. So he says Leo Tolstoy is a master of defamiliarization, says Victor Slavsky. Yeah. Now we'll talk about all of these formalists in detail in the coming sessions. For now, just associate the term with its meaning and the person who introduced it. Yeah. The next term is diaspora. The diaspora basically comes from a Greek word which means Greek word diaspora, which means to disperse. Yeah, to disperse. So it basically refers to people, dispersed groups of people. Now, if you were born in one place, say for example in India, and if you were to live in any other country apart from India, then it means that you come under the diasporic community. Yeah, meaning you have come outside your motherland and you're living elsewhere. So that is what is called as diaspora. Now, basically, the term is associated with biology, wherein you actually use this term to talk about the dispersion of seeds. Yeah, so that has been borrowed from the Greek language, and we're using it to refer to people who have been dispersed and they're living in various parts of the world. Yeah, so that is diaspora. Now, today's session has been very short, so I will end this here. And in the next session, probably I've actually selected a few previous year questions wherein we will be discussing literary forms along with these previous year questions. Yeah, I'll meet you sometime tomorrow. Thank you.